The nurse lifted my newborn out of my arms despite my protests. My mother's voice was calm, controlled. "It's already arranged, sweetheart." I panicked, trying to sit up as pain tore through my body from the C-section. A social worker appeared beside my bed, clipboard in hand, and confirmed that I had signed guardianship papers. I shook my head, my voice breaking. "I didn't sign anything. I didn't." But no one listened. My baby, my son, was carried out of the room while a nurse gently but firmly held me back. My mother followed them out, her hand on the social worker's shoulder like they were old friends. The door closed, and I was alone. My arms felt empty. My chest felt hollow. I stared at the ceiling, trying to understand what had just happened. What did I sign? And when? Because I had no memory of agreeing to this. None at all. My name is Ilara Voss. I am 22 years old. And the moment my mother walked out of that hospital room with my son, something in me broke permanently. I trusted her with everything, especially when I was vulnerable and alone. My baby's father had left when I was 4 months pregnant. My mother had been my rock. Or so I thought. Now I replayed every paper she had handed me during pregnancy. Every form she told me to sign. Every "don't worry, I'll handle it." Every reassurance that she was just helping. I had been exhausted, overwhelmed, scared. And she had taken advantage of that. She had planned this. I did not know how long. I did not know when it started. But as I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the empty bassinet beside me, I knew one thing for certain. This was not an accident. This was deliberate. And I had no idea how to fight back. Started months earlier. Flashback to when I was 5 months pregnant. My mother insisted I move in with her for support. "You can't do this alone," she said. "You need help. I'm your mother. Let me take care of you." Seemed reasonable. I was working part-time, barely making rent, and terrified of what was coming. So I moved in. First it felt like relief. She cooked meals. She drove me to appointments. She handled phone calls and paperwork. But slowly, I started to fade into the background. She answered questions at doctor visits. She made decisions about my prenatal vitamins, my diet, my schedule. People started looking at her when they talked about the baby. Not me. One day, I overheard her on the phone with a relative. Her voice was low, but I caught the words. "She can't handle this alone. She's not ready." I stood in the hallway, frozen. Was I ever in control? Or had she been steering this from the beginning? At a clinic visit when I was 7 months pregnant, the doctor asked me how I was feeling emotionally. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. "She's been very anxious," she said. "Mood swings. Crying a lot. I'm worried about postpartum depression." I blinked. I had cried twice. Once when I found out my ex was not coming back. Once when I was overwhelmed by baby registry options. That was it. But my mother made it sound like I was on the verge of collapse. The doctor made a note. I wanted to correct her, but my mother's hand was on my shoulder, squeezing gently. A warning. I stayed quiet. I brushed it off then. Told myself she was just being cautious. Now I saw it clearly. She was building a narrative. She was planting seeds, making sure everyone saw me as unstable, fragile, incapable. Who else did she convince? How many people believed her version of me instead of the truth? After I came home from the hospital without my baby, everything felt wrong. My son slept in my mother's room, not mine. Visitors came by to meet him, and they thanked her for stepping up. "You're such a good grandmother," they said. "It's wonderful that you're helping." I sat in the corner, watching strangers hold my child. Watching my mother accept praise for raising him. I was treated like a guest in my own child's life. Then I realized my phone was missing. I asked my mother where it was. She said I had misplaced it, that I was too tired to keep track of things. She would help me look for it later. But later never came. And without my phone, I had no way to contact anyone. No way to call for help. No way to document what was happening. I was being isolated. And I did not understand why until it was too late. I asked to hold my baby. My mother refused. "You're too emotional right now," she said. "You need to rest." Pushed back. I told her he was my son, that I had every right to hold him. She looked at me with something cold in her eyes. "If you can't control yourself, I'll have to report this," she said quietly. "For his safety." Froze. Report what? My wanting to hold my own child. But then I realized. She had people watching. The social worker. The relatives who thought I was unstable. The doctor who had notes about my anxiety. If she reported me, they would believe her. Not me. This was never temporary. She had no intention of giving him back. She had built a cage around me, and I had walked into it willingly. Because I trusted her. 'Cause she was my mother. And now I was trapped. A relative pulled me aside one afternoon. An aunt I barely knew. She spoke gently like I was fragile. "Sweetheart, you need to focus on recovery," she said. "Your mom is doing a wonderful job. Just let her handle things for now." That was when it hit me. Everyone believed I was unstable. Everyone thought I could not take care of my own child. My mother had not just taken my baby. She had taken my identity. She had rewritten who I was in everyone's eyes. I was no longer Ilara, the young mother trying her best. I was Ilara, the broken girl who could not handle responsibility. Ilara who needed to be managed, controlled, saved from herself. And no matter what I said, no one would believe me. Because she had already told them who I was. And they believed her version more than they believed me. I tried to take my baby back. It was a week after I came home from the hospital. My mother was in the kitchen. My son was sleeping in her room. I walked in quietly, picked him up, and held him against my chest. He was warm and perfect. For 30 seconds I felt like his mother again. Then my mother appeared in the doorway. Her face went pale. Then red. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "I'm holding my son," I said. She called for help. My aunt came running. They cornered me, talking in calm voices like I was dangerous. Hours later, a social worker called. My mother had filed a report about my behavior. There was an official record now. Anything I did, anything I said would be used against me. I was not just losing. I was being erased. And I had no idea how to stop it. That night I stopped reacting. I went quiet. Not defeated. Focused. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I realized something. Emotion was my enemy. Every time I cried, every time I raised my voice, every time I showed desperation, my mother used it against me. She pointed to it as proof that I was unstable. So I had to stop giving her ammunition. I had to become calm, controlled, strategic. If I wanted my son back, I had to change the game. I had to stop playing by her rules. I had to stop being the person she told everyone I was. And I had to start becoming someone no one could dismiss. Someone who could not be controlled. Someone who could win. That night I made a decision. I would get my son back. But not by fighting her head-on. By outsmarting her. Became calm. Cooperative. Grateful. I thanked my mother for her help. I told her she was right, that I needed time to recover. I stopped asking to hold my son. I stopped pushing back. And slowly she relaxed. She stopped watching me as closely. She stopped hovering. She started to believe that I had accepted my place. That I had given up. But I had not. I was gathering strength. Observing. Learning. Watching how she operated. How she controlled the narrative. How she kept people on her side. And I started to see the cracks. Small inconsistencies. Moments where her story did not quite line up. Moments where she had to adjust, to cover, to redirect. She was not as perfect as she pretended to be. And that meant she could be beaten. I just had to be patient. And I had to be smarter than her. I overheard her on the phone one afternoon. She was in the living room talking to someone I did not recognize. She agreed to everything, my mother said. Signed the papers willingly. It was her choice. But her tone changed when she saw me standing in the doorway. She ended the call quickly, smiled at me. "Just coordinating some things for the baby," she said lightly. But I knew she was hiding something. because I had not agreed to everything. I had not even seen most of the papers she claimed I signed. And if she was lying to someone on the phone, she was lying to other people too. That was the first real crack. The first piece of evidence that her version of events was not entirely true. And if I could find more cracks, I could start to dismantle her story. Piece by piece, I secretly got a job. A remote position doing data entry, something I could do on a borrowed laptop while my mother was out. I started saving money. Not much, but enough. I also started going to therapy. I found a counselor online, paid for sessions out of pocket, and never told my mother. For the first time in months I felt control returning. I was rebuilding my life quietly, carefully, in a way my mother could not see or sabotage. My therapist helped me understand what was happening. Coercive control, manipulation, gaslighting. She helped me see that I was not crazy, that my feelings were valid, that I had rights, and she helped me start planning. Not emotionally, strategically. What if I could prove my mother lied? What if I could show that the guardianship was obtained through deception? What if I could fight back legally? For the first time I had hope. Found the papers. They were in a folder in my mother's desk. I waited until she was out grocery shopping, then I searched her office. And there they were. Guardianship documents. My signature was on them. But something was off. The dates did not match. The document was dated 2 days before I gave birth. But I remembered that day clearly. I had been in early labor, in pain, barely able to focus. My mother had handed me papers, told me they were hospital consent forms. I signed them without reading, because I trusted her. But these were not hospital forms. They were legal documents transferring custody of my unborn child. And the date proved she had planned this before he was even born. Was it altered? Or had she known exactly when to strike? Either way, it was proof. Proof that I had been deceived. And that changed everything. My therapist gave me clear advice. Don't confront her, she said. Collect everything first. Build an airtight case. Then act. So I did. I started documenting. I took photos of the papers with my phone. I recorded conversations where my mother contradicted herself. I kept a journal of every interaction, every lie, every moment of control. I reached out quietly to a family lawyer, explaining my situation. The lawyer reviewed the documents and confirmed what I suspected. The guardianship could be challenged, especially if I could prove coercion. This was bigger than emotion now. This was a legal battle. And I needed to be prepared. I needed evidence. I needed witnesses. I needed to be unshakable. So I kept playing along, kept pretending, and kept collecting proof. One piece at a time. At a family gathering, my mother played the perfect guardian. She held my son, showed him off, accepted compliments gracefully. But her story slipped. Small inconsistencies. She told one relative I had postpartum depression. She told another I had asked her to take custody. She told a third that I was recovering from a breakdown. None of those stories matched. And people started to notice. I saw confusion on their faces. Glances exchanged. Whispered questions. My mother tried to smooth it over, but the damage was done. Her control was cracking. And for the first time, people were seeing the holes in her narrative. I did not say anything. I just watched. And waited. Because the more she talked, the more she contradicted herself. And the more ammunition I had. Someone pulled me aside after the gathering. A cousin I had not seen in years. Something doesn't feel right, she said quietly. About all of this. Are you okay? I almost cried. Because finally someone was asking. Someone was seeing through the facade. I told her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I told her I had not willingly given up my son. That my mother had manipulated the situation. That I was being isolated and controlled. My cousin listened. And then she said, "What do you need?" I was not alone anymore. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had someone on my side. Someone who believed me. Someone who could help. And that changed everything. Because one voice of support could become two, and two could become more. And eventually, the truth would be louder than my mother's lies. I recorded my mother admitting something crucial. We were alone in the house. I had my phone hidden in my pocket recording. I asked her why she took custody. She looked at me, and for a moment her mask slipped. I had to take over, she said. You would have failed. You were not ready. I saved you from yourself. It was not the full truth. But it was control. It was her admitting that she had made the decision for me. That she had taken my son because she believed I could not handle it. Not because I was actually unfit. But because she thought she knew better. I saved the recording. Sent it to my email. Backed it up in 3 places. This was not full proof yet. But it was a start. And it was in her own words. That mattered. I discovered she was benefiting financially. I found documents showing she was receiving government assistance using my baby. Money meant for single parents. Money that should have been mine. She had claimed my son as her dependent. Claimed me as incapacitated. And collected benefits. This was not just about protection. This was not just about her thinking she knew best. This was gain. Financial gain. And that changed the entire story. 'Cause now there was motive. She did not just take my son to help me. She took him because it benefited her. And that was something a court would care about. Something that proved this was not altruistic. It was selfish. Calculated. Well, now I had motive. And motive made everything else make sense. I requested my hospital records. Took weeks. But when they arrived I found something crucial. The signature on the guardianship papers was taken while I was sedated. The timestamp matched the moment right after my C-section. I had been in recovery, barely conscious, in pain. And my mother had brought papers to the hospital. Had someone hold my hand. Had guided my signature while I was too out of it to understand what I was signing. It was not legal. Could not be. Because I had not been in a mental state to consent. The hospital records proved it. The medication logs proved it. The timeline proved it. This changed everything. Because now I had undeniable proof that the guardianship was obtained through deception. And that meant it could be overturned. I almost confronted her. I was sitting across from her at dinner, watching her feed my son, and I wanted to scream. To throw the evidence in her face. To tell her I knew everything. But I stopped myself. Not yet. Timing was everything. If I confronted her now, she would destroy evidence. She would twist the story. She would turn people against me before I had the chance to present my case. I needed to wait. I needed to have everything in place. The lawyer. Evidence. The witnesses. Plan. So I stayed quiet. Smiled. Ate dinner. And I let her think she had won. Because the moment she let her guard down completely, I would strike. And when I did, there would be no recovering from it. I organized everything. Documents. Recordings. Inconsistencies. Hospital records. Financial records. Witness statements from my cousin and others who were starting to see the truth. I met with my lawyer and laid it all out. She reviewed everything carefully. And then she looked at me and said, "You have a case." For the first time in months I felt powerful. Not helpless. Not controlled. Powerful. Because I had done the work. I had been patient. I had been strategic. And now I was ready. Ready to fight. Ready to take back what was mine. Ready to prove that I was not the broken, unstable girl my mother told everyone I was. I was a mother. And I was getting my son back. No matter what it took. My mother made a mistake. At another family gathering, she publicly called me unfit. She told a story about how I had tried to take the baby without permission. How I was emotionally unstable. How she was protecting him from me. But this time someone questioned her. My cousin. The one who had started to see through the lies. "That's not what Ilara told me," she said. My mother hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Other people noticed. The hesitation. The uncertainty. The crack in her perfect facade. Someone else asked a question. Then another. My mother tried to explain, but her story kept shifting. and people saw it. Her image was breaking. The perfect grandmother. The selfless protector. It was all crumbling. And she knew it. I stayed silent. Just watched. Because I did not need to say anything. The truth was speaking for itself. Everything began to shift. My lawyer filed a petition to challenge the guardianship. Evidence was presented to the court. Timeline. The hospital records. The financial motive. The recordings. For the first time my mother looked unsure. She hired her own lawyer. Tried to fight back. But the evidence was overwhelming. The court ordered an investigation. Social workers interviewed me. Interviewed her. Reviewed the documents. And slowly the truth came out. That I had been coerced. That the guardianship was obtained through deception. That I was not unfit. That I had been manipulated. And for the first time people believed me. Not her. Me. She was losing control. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. The lies she had built her case on were unraveling. One by one. And she could not hold them together anymore. Her lies unraveled completely. People turned away. Family members who had praised her now avoided her. The social worker who had initially sided with her apologized to me. Her authority collapsed. She tried to explain. Tried to claim she had been protecting me. That she had only wanted what was best. But no one believed her anymore. Because the evidence was clear. And her story had too many holes. The court ruled in my favor. The guardianship was terminated. Custody was returned to me. Immediately. And now I was taking everything back. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. But with quiet, undeniable strength. The strength she said I never had. The strength I had built in the shadows while she thought she had won. And now that strength was all mine. I walked into my mother's house calm. No anger. No chaos. No tears. Just certainty. The social worker was there. My lawyer was there. And my mother stood in the hallway, holding my son. I did not ask. I did not beg. I simply walked over and took him from her arms. This time no one stopped me. My son looked up at me with wide eyes. And I held him. Finally. Truly. My mother stood there powerless. Watching. Unable to do anything. The guardianship was gone. Her control was gone. Her lies had been exposed. And I had won. Not by destroying her. But by becoming everything she said I could never be. Strong. Capable. Unbreakable. A mother. I looked at her one last time. And then I walked out. With my son in my arms. And I never looked back. Because the truth. I did not need her anymore. I never did. I just needed to believe in myself. And now finally I did.